My father was an electrician, and I was a kid, and I used to go along the set, and I used to look at the photographer. It was great what he'd done. And my father used to print in the kitchen at home, and I couldn't read or write, but those days you were called stupid. And there was no fancy words like dyslexia. And then you left school at 15, and I got a printing job. And then you learnt how to print photographs, but it was more than your dreams to become a photographer. And then I got a printing job in the studios, and then the company went bankrupt. I took it over, and then just you started getting dazed. Don't look now. It's one of the first jobs I ever worked on, and I didn't have a clue of what I was doing. I borrowed one camera, and I'd just done the 10 days in England. But you knew what the images were needed because you've been printing for years, and you had an idea. There's no universities, no, that you worked your way up. I shot on that, and then you started getting 1 day here, 1 day there, 2 days there. And then the big break really was Bridge Too Far, with Richard Attenborough, and Terry Clegg, who was the production manager, stroke producer on Elephant Man. They gave me a break of doing the second unit on the Bridge Too Far, and one thing led to another.
Ladies and gentlemen, the terrible Elephant Man.
Those days at the studio were not involved in who was the photographer. The production manager really recommended someone, and they took that as okay. You didn't have portfolios. You just got recommended by a production manager. He was in charge of the film. You know, like on this particular film, this production manager got Stuart Craig, got really good technicians all around David Lynch, and I think no one took more advantage of it in the best way you can imagine was David Lynch, because Freddie Francis, Stuart Craig, all these people were just great technicians, and made something out of it. But Terry held this whole film together, and he helped me through the rest of my career. So it was really down to him that I was on Elephant Man, and I had my interview with Mel Brooks, which was, you can imagine, you're going to see Mel Brooks, and after about 1 minute I said, well, should this be a bit funnier, a bit more serious? He said, I'm trying to keep my name right off this film, because, Mel Brooks and the Elephant Man doesn't rhyme. It's called Brooks Films. And anyway, I got the job.
A hospital's no place for secrecy, Mr. Treves. Doctors spiriting hooded figures about in the corridors is apt to cause comment. Why wasn't this patient properly admitted? Why is he in the isolation ward? He's not contagious, is he?
Oh, no, sir. No, he's got chronic bronchitis and he's been badly beaten.
You're probably the only technician on the film set that if you don't turn up that day, everything carries on exactly the same. Everyone else, the drivers, the catering, the focus puller, everyone, if they don't turn up, they have to replace them. Or somehow. But my job is, you're there every day, but if I don't turn up, everything would carry on exactly the same. So you don't really have a brief. The idea of the job is to make yourself blend in. They're not aware of that situation. And you just get involved in the film. You know the script. And those days, it used to be read aloud to me, because I couldn't read the script. And then used to speak to the continuity girl, and she might read the scene out that day again to me. And then you can underline what you thought was most important thing, and then obviously you see these actors act, and you soon, you're not totally stupid. You see what's important and not important, and then you try and change things a little bit sometimes, but you always make your pictures look like it's from the movie. There are exceptions, like Quadrophenia. I took all the kids out and put them in a situation, but I think many years after, Sidney Pollack said to me, he said, I don't want pictures to look like they're not from my film, because otherwise people are looking for that image. But there's a balance. Like these days, many posters are just this giant portrait with aerosol in the background. But a lot of the people I've worked for want pictures to look like they're from the movie, to give a feeling of the movie. And, there's a lot of people in Hollywood that might disagree with that.
He never mentioned his mental state.
Oh, he's an imbecile, probably from birth. Man's a complete idiot. Pray to God he's an idiot.
Elephant Man was in black and white, and obviously from day one we all agreed you should only shoot black and white. But no, those days you shot on film, and you had two cameras. You had black and white in one and colour in the other. And the master set, these that we used to call A&E, America and Europe, or the rest of the world A&E. So you made two master sets up, but the black and white was the one that was reproduced for all the newspapers, and so black and white was really important. There's no thing as shooting 20%, 30%. Some people say, well, can you give us 30% black and white, 30, 40? You couldn't. It's 50-50. You know. This particular film was in black and white, so we all agreed only black and white, and not even to do a little offset thing in colour or any of that, just black and white. So there is no difference. I mean, in a sense, without getting too detailed, you're shooting an image. You shoot in colour, you shoot in black and white. Now on digital, you just shoot colour. So it's much easier in a sense, because you used to sometimes hold the shooting up to shoot a still after a scene, and you say once in black and white, and then you say, oh, 1 second, and do it again in colour. And so if it's a very emotional scene or quite a difficult thing, the actors used to, you say, oh, can you hang on a second? You have to switch cameras, and sometimes you have to change your lenses as well, because you use the same lens for both shots, so you didn't have two of those lenses. The first image you see is a picture from the movie, and so you kind of like, everyone knows you have to have pictures. You get some actors that are irritated by it, some actors that you can get in their eye line, and they feel uncomfortable. So the whole point of the job is to make them relax, and you become part of the film set. And and the director usually knows that the images are fairly important, but the most important things is film, not your pictures. And if you think any different, you're in trouble.
Hello. My name is
John Merrick.
on egg.
No. John, that's very good. Say John Merrick.
The first time we saw John in makeup was that exact scene, and we all sat round, and it was about 10:30 at night, and we're in Lee Studios, and everyone was patiently waiting around. The set was lit, and they'd been in makeup all day, and he came on the set with this makeup, but just a shirt, not, he just had leggings or something, I can't remember what he had on. They just wanted to play a scene for camera, and he came on, and it all went quiet. Everyone was so sensitive to the situation, and Tony Hopkins, they sat down and done the scene, and it was very emotional on the set, and it's something everyone was waiting for, because we'd started the film, they didn't have the makeup process sorted completely. So there's loads of scenes in the film where there's no makeup, or he has a hood over his head, so we shot all these other scenes. And again, I think Terry Clegg pushed this makeup through with Chris Tucker, to get the pieces made, and then Wally Schneiderman applied with his daughter Beryl to the face, and you see how brilliant it is. But it was just such a moment when he first came on, and the respect from the other actor and the respect from everybody on the set. And I think they decided that day that we should do something very different, because the unions were slightly stronger in those days, and we should do 2 days work in one and then have the next day off. And it was very unusual, and not one person flickered there. They said that absolutely, they were all for the project, which was quite a big thing, So, and just the camera crew might come in late the next day and get it pre-lit. And so when John arrived on set, we could then shoot, 2 days in one.
Why didn't you tell me you could read?
Frightened.
Oh, I see.
I was afraid to talk. Please forgive me.
I've worked with him a few times. He's just a really professional, fantastic actor. Professional, actually, is probably a strange word. He's just an actor that really does what he has to do. He gets involved in the part, and he's relaxed about getting involved in the part. He's not. Some actors are more. They get so involved they become methody, and which doesn't make them better or worse. It's just different. But he was particularly nice off-set as well as on-set. But you knew on-set he was given a huge amount of energy to the part.
If only I could find her so she could see me. We're just lovely friends. Here now, that perhaps she could love me as I am. I'm trying so hard to be good.
It's a very unusual film, actually. I mean, most films you work on, everyone's for the project, but this film was particular. It was just, and it was quite, I mean, I don't know whether I'm remembering correctly, but it felt emotional. You felt the emotion. You felt like the actors were really playing the part. The scenes with Hannah Gordon and him were great. I mean, if you see the film, they're so emotional. And then with Anne Bancroft, when she visits him, and when he's looking at her picture beside the bed and stuff like that. I mean, all the actors just were brilliant, you know. And, I mean, and some people like Wendy Hillier, can you imagine? You know, I remember a film in 1958 from Her Sons and Lovers that was one of the great films, which Freddie Francis lit and Jack Cardiff directed. And if you see this film, it's just an incredible film. And then you're working, Wendy Hillier was the main lady in the film, and you're working with this amazing lady that liked a cup of tea from bone. The only thing she demanded was bone china cup and saucer. She said, that's my only demand.
Excuse me. The elephant man.
Sorry. Sorry.
John, at the end of the film, which was very strange, on that picture, he wanted to make a present to, I think, a few people, and he had that picture blown up very large, and I mean, it looked like what it looked like, but it was, I was never too sure about the fact that he was making presents to people of that picture, and but you know, I'm probably oversensitive, but anyway, it was just a nice image, you know, and it's something I've always done. I try and shoot wide and show the whole thing, not always shoot close up. I mean, on all films, if I can, I try and shoot pictures wide to tell the story. So often they cut and they do this and do that on films, but often I want a two-shot, you know, and they did, and there was one scene on Heat where you had Al Pacino and De Niro. They weren't going to shoot a two-shot, they were just shooting over shoulder, and I said, well, no, I've got to have a two-shot here. And I have a big debate with the director. He says, well, if you want it, we're going to get it as well. But you know, so it's a dilemma you can have on certain film sets. They don't shoot a wide shot. Historically, you used to walk into a room, and the first shot a director would do would be usually the top corner in the room, far up, and shoot that as a wide shot, and then everyone knew what they were doing. That was one important thing for the rest of the scene, because you're locked in, the continuity going to say, well, no, that was that, and you're locked in. But now they might not do that so much. If you look at old films, you'll see two people talking, not over shoulder. David Lean would measure, and many directors used to measure the portraits. He would shoot a wide shot, and then he would measure, and it'd be exact to the inch, the close-up and the other close-up. That was a really unusual scene, but where they all pick on him, bully him, basically. And again, it was so believable when they were doing it, and it was quite emotional. And John Hurt all the time, you know, his voice, his sounds, and Mike Elphick, you know, who's a character anyway, you know, and he was one of these actors that give it everything. Again, I worked with him many times. It was very believable when they were doing it. And that was what I mentioned before about the sounds of John Hurt during that scene, and then the participation of the actors. You know, it was uncomfortable to be on the set when they played that scene, and when it was on the screen, it was definitely on the screen. You know, it was David Lynch. He captured all of those things. I mean, that's what he done. in St Pancras station and closing off the station. And those days you used to go Sunday morning because London was very quiet. The shops were closed, and it was quite normal to come in on Sunday morning. And then the unit call would be half an hour later. In respect, people can have a little sleep on Sunday. Different times. And it was just an incredible image, and with the hood and the stick coming down the staircase in the station, with the graphics of all the station, the metal work, and him coming down there. There's another image the very first day, and the docks in those days were still empty. There was no apartments on the wharf. And so he used to do all the car chases, police car chases around the dock areas, because that was the only empty part in London. And also you could do Victorian films, like they've done French Lieutenant's Woman round now, which and of course The Elephant Man. And so the first day they'd closed off a few streets, which didn't take much closing off in those days, and just dressed it with meat carcasses and carts and things, and Tony Hopkins comes walking down. I think it was the first day on the film, and Freddie smoked the whole place out and made it look incredible and gave it atmosphere. And that was the very first day. That was, it was quite a place. It's changed now, the docks, all those fancy apartments. And everyone was for the project. It was one of those films that was very, very, very aware that everyone, and there was a young director, and there was no thing, we didn't know what he's doing. There was none of that dialogue. It was like he really had his ideas, and everyone supported him. He arrived in his coat. He looked like a college student, and he was I think he was 33. I might be wrong on that. And he was terribly enthusiastic. He was just a nice guy, and you could see him working with Freddie Francis. And one of the great things was when he was interviewed after the film, he really applauded Freddie Francis and said, I couldn't have made the film without him. And it was just so fantastic to hear a director who was a young director applaud Freddie Francis so much. And I think that showed you his character. I think he asked me to do the film about the lawnmower going across the Montana, and I couldn't do it. That was really cheesed off. I'd love to have met him again. But, it was the director's film, and you got involved in the whole thing. You got to understand what they were trying to do, and you can't just put your heart into it. And they expect you to get good pictures, and if you got really good pictures, they were really happy, and if you got okay pictures, they were okay, But they knew you were trying your best, I guess, and I think what happens on most films is they're directing their film, and he was very young in those days, and so his whole focus was on directing the film, and the last thing he was thinking of was pictures. And I would imagine at the end and with the publicists and perhaps with a couple of other people, I sometimes used to ask people on the set, what do you think of this, what do you think of that? And I'd make master sets. And then I guess as the film got closer to being released, David Lynch then said, well, no, I want to look at these images. I'm only guessing this, because he's a very hands-on person. And at that point, that is the time for him to look at it, because he can say, I like this, I don't like this, and this. Sometimes you go through the pictures with the director, because they've been around long enough and they have time. But I mean, I don't remember on this film going through. He probably saw some images and probably said, that's great, because he was just excited by the whole thing, But they somewhere along the line, they're very involved. And I do lots for Michael Mann, and he will actually, everything has to go through him, and other directors are very much like that. And I should imagine David Lynch is like that now as well. These days it's slightly different, because you've got distributors, internet, and everything whizzing around everywhere, and everyone wants to know now. But the fact is, the film's not going to be cut for a year or two. And if everyone just relaxed, like in those days, you'd have 2 people in the production office, 2 people in the accounts department, 3 assistants on the set, 4 on a camera crew, 4 on a sound crew, and they get on and make a film. Hair, makeup, all the crews were much smaller, and the films are no different then to now. It's just now with the computers and everyone want now on bits of paper being passed around. It makes me sound terribly old-fashioned, but it's not old-fashioned. It's questionable whether someone somewhere is making people pass bits of paper around to such an excess that films cost a ridiculous amount of money. Even a small film now, you go to a production office, there's people all over the place. You trip over them, people. Whereas those days you went into a production office and you spoke to the production secretary, they were called then, not even a coordinator. And there'd be a production manager and a secretary. You used to walk into that office and she'd know exactly what you wanted, exactly where it had to go. It was a very brief conversation, and off you went. And if she didn't have time to mess around, there was no runners making cups of tea or people doing this or pass this bit of paper. The call sheet would be handed out to you at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or in the morning, and everyone knew what they were doing the next day, so it could be discussed. Like now, it might come out 10 o'clock at night. It's a different industry. When I talk to kids starting up, I always say to them, always treat every film as if it's going to be huge. And this was a film that I think you put 100% into all the films, but if you allowed yourself to be lazy on such a film like this, you would have missed out terrible. Because I think the way that we were all trained or grew up through the industry, we all put 100% into the film, and hopefully it was recognised. Well, it was recognised by production managers or directors, producers. So you were just sort of part of the cog, the team. Very family. In fact, a friend of mine just died 2 days ago in America, and I got to write a letter to his wife, and it is like losing a family member. And I don't want to make that sound like over the top, but it is someone that you spent 6 months with, doing 18-hour days, Michael Mann films, Gary Jay's name was, and you do these ridiculous hours, and you're there all supporting one another, having a giggle, and then you come home in the evening and your kids are playing at the pool, or in the morning rather, they're at the pool swimming and having, and so when someone dies, like on this film, Freddie's gone, the actors have gone, sometimes it's like losing a member of your family. I don't know how that sounds, but there's, Or when Freddie died, the first thing is your phone goes, have you got any pictures of him behind the set? We want to put a picture out. And not just Elephant, he's done obviously millions of films, but you get those phone calls and then you think, God, he's died. Let's talk about that. But they're asking for pictures. But
I can't tell you how sorry I am for what happened. You see, I had no idea. Really.
Please, you mustn't blame yourself. Mr. Trees, don't worry about me, my friend. I am happy every hour of the day. My life is full, because I know that I am loved.
It was a very special film to work on. People often say to you, what was your favourite film you worked on? And there's probably that and Gandhi, you knew, and it's real stories. Like I worked on Ali, and that was very special. But when you work on stories about real people and there's a good script, there is a difference. And like you come back to talk about it now like this, and it's a film that you remember in great detail. There's some films I'd have to search a bit more to talk about it so much. But it is a film you remember in great detail. Yeah. So it was very good.